The key fit, the door opened, and John Wayne's face went white at what he saw in that hotel bed. Wait, because what he did in the next 8 minutes would haunt him for 30 years, and the man lying there would never know Wayne's real name. The hallway smelled like old wood polish and cigarette smoke that'd been soaking into the wallpaper since before the war. Wayne's boots made soft thuds on the runner carpet, and he was holding his hat in one hand while fishing for the room key with the other. It was 3:17 in the morning, and he'd been drinking whiskey with the stunt coordinator in the hotel bar for the past 4 hours because neither of them could sleep, and the shoot call was at 5:30 anyway. The key said 9. His room was 9, but he was tired, whiskey fuzzy, and in the dim hallway, the numbers looked blurry. He stopped at what he thought was his door. 6 looked close enough to 9 when you're running on no sleep, and tried the knob. It turned. The door wasn't locked. He pushed it open and took one step before his brain caught up to what his eyes were seeing. A man was sitting on the edge of the bed, not lying down, sitting. His back was to the door, shoulders hunched forward, and on the nightstand, 3 feet from his right hand, was a revolver with the cylinder hanging open. The man's hands were shaking so hard Wayne could see it from the doorway. The lamp was on. There was a photograph face down on the floor. Wayne didn't move. The man didn't turn around. For a count of 5, neither of them breathed. And then the man said very quietly, "Wrong room." His voice was flat, empty. Wayne's hand was still on the doorknob. The smart thing would have been to back out, close the door, say sorry, walk away. But he didn't walk away. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. Look, this is where you need to understand what kind of pressure Wayne was under that week, because it explains why his judgment was already cracked before he even turned that key. They were shooting a Western called Desert Smoke for Republic Pictures, 4th week into a 6-week schedule, and Wayne was playing a cavalry sergeant who gets court-martialed for disobeying orders to save a wagon train. It was the kind of role he'd done 100 times, but this one had a director who kept pushing for takes nobody needed, and a producer who kept showing up drunk and rewriting scenes on the back of call sheets. Wayne had been getting 3 hours of sleep a night for 18 days straight. His back hurt, his knees hurt. He'd twisted his ankle on a stunt the week before, and the medic had wrapped it so tight his boot barely fit. The makeup artist would later say, Wayne looked like he was running on fumes and willpower, and both were running out. And now he was standing in a stranger's hotel room at 3 in the morning, looking at a gun on a nightstand, and the stranger still hadn't turned around. Wayne said, "You all right, friend?" The man laughed. It wasn't a real laugh. It was the sound people make when they're so far past all right that the question itself is funny. He said, "Do I look all right to you?" "Can't see your face," Wayne said. "Good." The air in the room felt thick. Wayne could hear his own pulse in his ears. The revolver was a Colt, looked like a .38, civilian model, 6 chambers. The cylinder was open, but Wayne couldn't see from this angle if it was loaded. The man was wearing a white undershirt and dark slacks, no shoes, and his hair was cut short like military or ex-military. There was a suitcase open on the chair by the window, clothes folded neat inside, and that detail hit Wayne harder than the gun because it meant this man had been planning to leave in the morning, had been planning to go somewhere, start over, keep moving forward, or planning something else entirely. Wayne took 2 steps farther into the room. He set his hat down on the dresser. The man's shoulders tensed, but he didn't move otherwise. Wayne said, "I'm in room 9. Thought this was mine. Door wasn't locked, so I walked in." "You didn't. Seems that way." Wayne pulled the chair away from the window, turned it around, and sat down facing the man's back. He was close enough now to see the man's hands properly. They were shaking so hard the knuckles were white. There was a wedding ring on his left hand, gold band, thin. The photograph on the floor was too far away to make out clearly, but Wayne could see it was a woman and a child. "Notice something here." Wayne didn't ask the man's name, and the man didn't ask Wayne's. That wasn't an accident. Wayne kept his voice low and his tone flat, like they were two strangers talking about the weather at a bus stop. The man said, "You should leave." "Probably," Wayne said. "But I'm not real good at doing what I should." "This isn't your problem." Didn't say it was. The man turned his head just slightly. Not enough to see Wayne's face, but enough that Wayne could see the side of his jaw. It was tight, clenched, and there was a bruise under his eye that was maybe 3 days old. The man said, "You don't know me. You don't know what I've done." "True," Wayne said. "But I know what you're thinking about doing, and I'm here to tell you it's a bad idea. Stop for a second and picture this from above, because what you're about to see only makes sense when you understand where both men were looking." Wayne was sitting in the chair facing the man's back. The man was facing the nightstand and the gun. The door was behind Wayne. If the man reached for the gun, Wayne couldn't stop him in time. They were locked in a kind of standoff that wasn't a standoff because neither of them had said the word gun out loud yet. The man said, "I was at Guadalcanal." Wayne didn't say anything. He just nodded, even though the man couldn't see him. The man said, "Came home in '43, married my girl, had a kid, got a job at a rail yard in Kansas. Everything was fine. Everything was supposed to be fine." His voice cracked on the last word, and he stopped talking. Wayne waited. The silence stretched out for maybe 20 seconds, and then the man said, "I hit her." Wayne's stomach dropped. He didn't let it show on his face. He said, "Your wife? Last week, she said something about the bills and I just..." The man's voice broke completely. He put his face in his hands. His whole body was shaking now. He said, "I don't know what happened. I've never touched her before. Never. But I did it. And she took the kid and left. And I don't blame her." This is where Wayne could have walked out. Should have walked out. This wasn't a set accident, or a bar fight, or some studio boss making threats. This was a man confessing something dark and private to a stranger at 3 in the morning, and Wayne had no training for this, no script, no director to call cut if he said the wrong thing. He was an actor playing cowboys and soldiers, not a doctor, not a priest, not anyone qualified to talk a combat veteran down from a ledge. But he stayed in that chair, and he said, "Where are they now?" "Her sister's place in Omaha. She called me yesterday, said she's not coming back, said she'll send for her things." The man lifted his head out of his hands, but still didn't turn around. He said, "I told her she was right. Told her to keep the kid away from me, because if I did it once..." He couldn't finish the sentence. Wayne said, "You serve?" "Marine Corps. 3 years. You see combat? Every day for 16 months. Wayne nodded, and the man said, "Don't tell me it's the war. Don't tell me it's shell shock. That's not an excuse." "There's no excuse." "Wasn't going to," Wayne said. "But I am going to tell you that gun's not the answer. Listen, this is the moment where most people think Wayne gave some kind of hero speech. That's not what happened. Wayne sat in that chair and talked to this stranger like he was talking to a ranch hand who'd gotten drunk and made a mistake. Not because the mistake was small, but because treating it like the end of the world wouldn't help anybody. He didn't use big words. He didn't quote scripture. He just talked. He said, "You hit her once. That's bad. That's real bad. But you know it's bad, which means you're not the kind of man who thinks it's okay. And if you're not that kind of man, then you've got a choice here. You can take that gun and make sure you never hit anyone again. Or you can figure out why you did it and make damn sure you never do it again without the gun." The man said, "What if I can't?" "Can't what?" "Figure it out. Fix it. What if I'm just broken?" Wayne leaned forward. His elbows were on his knees now, and he was looking at the back of the man's head, and he said, "Then you get help. You find a doctor or a priest or somebody who knows how to put broken things back together. You don't give up because giving up is the easy way out. And brother, you didn't survive Guadalcanal by taking the easy way. Wait a minute. Because here's the part nobody knew until Wayne's daughter found a letter he'd written to himself years later, sealed in an envelope marked Room 6. In that letter, Wayne admitted he almost grabbed the gun, almost stood up, walked over to that nightstand, picked up the revolver, and took it with him when he left. His hand actually moved toward it twice during the conversation, but he didn't do it because he realized halfway through reaching that it wouldn't solve anything. The man would just find another gun, another way, another moment. The only thing that would matter was whether the man chose to stay or chose to go, and Wayne couldn't make that choice for him. Nobody could. The man said, "Why do you care?" Wayne said, "Don't know. Maybe because I opened the wrong door. Maybe because I've been where you are. Not the exact same spot, but close enough. Maybe because if I walk out of here and you do something stupid, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if I could have said something different." He paused. Or maybe I'm just a guy who can't mind his own business. For the first time since Wayne walked in, the man laughed. It was a real laugh this time. Short and quiet, but real. He said, "You're not from around here." "California," Wayne said. "Here for work." "What kind of work?" "The kind that doesn't matter right now." The man finally turned around. His face was red, eyes swollen from crying. He'd probably been doing for hours before Wayne walked in. And when he looked at Wayne, his expression went blank for a second, like he was trying to place him, like maybe he'd seen this face before in a movie theater or on a poster somewhere, but couldn't quite connect the dots. Wayne held his gaze and didn't say anything, kept his face neutral, didn't give anything away, and after a moment the man looked away. He said, "I don't even know your name." "Don't need to," Wayne said. They sat like that for another 3 minutes. Wayne didn't move. The man didn't move. The gun stayed on the nightstand. Outside a truck drove past, and the sound faded. The hotel clock ticked, and then the man stood up, walked over to the nightstand, picked up the revolver, opened the drawer, and put it inside. He closed the drawer. He turned around and looked at Wayne and said, "Thank you." Wayne stood up. He picked up his hat from the dresser. He said, "You going to be all right?" The man nodded. He didn't look convinced, but he looked like he meant to try. Wayne walked to the door, put his hand on the knob, and before he opened it, he said, "There's a doctor in Los Angeles. Guy named Harrison. He works with veterans. I'll leave his number at the front desk under your room number. You don't have to call him, but if you do, tell him a friend sent you." The man said, "I don't know how to pay you back." "Don't," Wayne said. "Just stay alive long enough to figure out what comes next." Before we go on, you need to understand one thing about how Wayne carried himself after that night, because it explains why he never told this story to anyone except in that sealed letter. He didn't want credit. He didn't want anyone thinking he was some kind of saint who saved a man's life with 8 minutes of conversation. The truth was messier than that. The truth was, Wayne walked out of that room at 3:42 in the morning, went to his own room 2 doors down, sat on the edge of his bed, still wearing his boots and hat, and shook for 10 minutes straight because he'd been terrified the entire time that he'd say the wrong thing and the man would reach for that gun and Wayne would have to watch it happen. His hands were still shaking when he got in the shower at 4:15. He made it to the set on time, did his scenes, took his falls. Nobody noticed anything different except the makeup artist, who asked if he was feeling all right, and Wayne said he was fine, just didn't sleep well. They wrapped Desert Smoke 2 weeks later. Wayne went back to California. He never returned to that hotel. Here's what he didn't know, what he wouldn't learn until years later when he tried to find out. The man in room 6 checked out the next morning at 7:15, 2 hours after Wayne left for the set, paid his bill in cash, left no forwarding address. The front desk clerk later told someone who told someone else that he'd found an envelope addressed to room 9, which was Wayne's actual room. But when he tried to deliver it, Wayne had already left for the day, and by the time he got back that night, the envelope had vanished. The clerk thought maybe he'd slipped it under the door and someone had kicked it aside, or maybe he'd left it on the desk and another clerk had thrown it away, thinking it was trash. Whatever the man wrote in that envelope, whatever he wanted to say to the stranger who'd sat with him for 8 minutes at 3 in the morning, it disappeared into the gap between intention and delivery, and neither of them ever knew the other's real name. Hold this moment in your mind, because when we come back to it, you won't see it the same way. 10 years later, Wayne was doing press for the Alamo in a hotel in Chicago, and after the interview wrapped around 6 in the evening, he walked back to his room on the 8th floor. The hallways were carpeted in dark red, the walls papered in gold and cream stripes, and the lighting was that soft amber you get in expensive hotels. As he turned the corner toward his door, key already in hand, he saw a man standing in the hallway about 15 feet away, mid-30s, wearing a dark suit with a briefcase in his left hand. The man looked at Wayne, Wayne looked at him, and for 3 seconds, neither of them moved, neither of them breathed, and Wayne felt his chest go tight the way it had 10 years earlier in that other hotel. Then the man smiled, a real smile, the kind that reaches all the way to the eyes and means something, and said very quietly, "Mr. Wayne." He didn't say anything else, just nodded once, a single deliberate dip of his chin, and walked toward the elevator at the far end of the hall. Wayne stood there watching him go. He couldn't be sure. The face was different, fuller, the eyes less hollow, but the walk was the same. The way he held his shoulders was the same, and when the elevator doors closed, Wayne realized his hands were shaking. He never confirmed it, never asked, never tried to find out if that man in Chicago was the same man from room 6, because part of him didn't want to know. Wayne never spoke about it, not to his wife, not to his kids, not to anyone. The only record was a letter his daughter found in 1985, 6 years after he died, in a box marked "To Not Open, Until I'm Gone." The letter was 3 pages, handwritten, dated 1962. It described the hotel, the room, the gun, the man's face, and at the end Wayne wrote, "I don't know if I helped him or made it worse. I don't know if he lived or died. I don't know his name, and he doesn't know mine. But I think about him every time I walk into a hotel. If you're reading this, and if by some chance you're him, I hope you figured it out. I hope you found Harrison, or someone like him. I hope you're still here, and I hope you know that whatever you did after I left, it was your choice, not mine. I didn't save you. You saved yourself. I just opened the wrong door." Wayne's daughter tried to find records from the hotel, tried to track down a guest registry from 1952, but the hotel had been torn down in 1968, and there was no way to know who'd been in room 6. She called the makeup artist from Desert Smoke, and he said he came in one morning looking like hell, wouldn't talk about it. I asked him what was wrong, and he said he'd had a long night. She found the name Harrison in her father's old address book. Dr. Leonard Harrison, psychiatrist, specializing in combat veterans. She called his widow, who said yes. Wayne had referred several men over the years, always anonymously, always paying their first 3 sessions out of pocket. She didn't have records of their names, but she remembered her husband saying Wayne had a habit of finding people in trouble and pointing them toward help without ever taking credit. That's the part that stays with you. Not the 8 minutes in the hotel room, not the gun, not even whether the man lived or died. It's the fact that Wayne carried it for 30 years, never told a soul, never used it for publicity, and the only reason anyone knows is because he wrote it down and sealed it away. The letter ended with a line Wayne's daughter later had engraved on a plaque. Sometimes the wrong door is the right one. You just don't know it until 30 years later. We don't know what happened to the man in room 6. We don't know if he called Dr. Harrison. We don't know if he went back to his wife. We don't know if the man in Chicago was him or just a stranger. We don't know if Wayne saved a life or just delayed something inevitable. And maybe that's the point. Maybe this story matters because John Wayne walked into the wrong room at 3 in the morning, saw something that wasn't his business, and stayed anyway. Not because he knew what to say, not because he had all the answers, but because he couldn't walk away. That's not heroism. That's just not walking away. And sometimes when the door opens and you see something you weren't supposed to see, not walking away is the hardest choice you'll ever make. If you enjoyed spending this time here, I'd be grateful if you'd consider subscribing. A simple like also helps, more than you'd think. And if you want to hear about the time Wayne spent 8 hours talking a director out of firing a young actor who showed up drunk, tell me in the comments, because that story's waiting. The photograph on the floor in room 6 stayed face down. Wayne never picked it up. He never saw the woman's face or the child's face. He didn't need to. Some things you leave where they are. The man in room 6 kept his family private, and Wayne kept that privacy even when it meant carrying a story that haunted him for 3 decades without ever knowing how it ended. That's the door he opened at 3:17 in the morning during the 4th week of shooting a Western nobody remembers. That's the 8 minutes that changed everything and nothing. That's the stranger whose name he never learned and the life he might have saved without ever knowing for sure. And that's John Wayne, walking out of that room at 3:42, closing the door behind him and carrying the weight of it alone for the rest of his life.